6th grade. It's Miss Odell. It's Wednesday, May the 5th, 2021. Yesterday in science class, you guys read some pages. I think it was 340 to 343. And you did activity manuals in activity manual pages 227 through 228. Here in just a moment, we're going to go over to the answers to those two as well as 226. You're going to highlight some things, and tomorrow you're going to have an open book or activity manual quiz. All right, so first of all, I want to talk a little bit about the reading. On page 340, you saw a picture of a neuron, okay, which is this right here. This is a neuron. So what is a neuron? It's a nerve cell, okay? So just as the book said, the brain interprets incoming messages as pain, and you become aware that your toe is hurting for some reason. Well, the nerve cells are called neurons, and they let you know. In some ways, neurons are similar to the other cells in your body. Each has a cell body with a nucleus. Here's your cell body, okay? And here is the nucleus of that cell body. It also has chromosomes and DNA, but neurons also have the unique ability to communicate with each other. The neurons located outside the brain and spinal cord make up the peripheral nervous system, which we talked about that as well. All right? So the shape and the size of a neuron depends on its function, where it's located and what its function is in the body. Some neurons are used for, like your senses, for sensory. Some carry messages. Others are used for motor neurons, like sending messages from the brain and spinal cord to the muscles and so on. So neurons can live for a long time, in fact, longer than most cells. But most neurons that die are not replaced. We've talked about cells that are replaced, okay? Now, you see here on the end, you have some dendrites, all right? These are, the dendrites actually receive the electrical impulses or messages from another neuron. The dendrite passes the message to the cell body, which is here. And then the cell body passes the message to the axon. So we have dendrites to the cell body, down here to the axon, okay? Now, which sends the impulse to the next neuron. Now, your body has, well, let me just back up here. A neuron, or a nerve cell rather, has approximately 10,000 of these dendrites that receives the messages. Find that fairly interesting, okay? Now, let's move on over here and let's look at this dendrite here. All right, so here we are looking at another picture of a dendrite, all right? And you see how the neurons carry messages by electrical impulses right here. And the chemical reaction of the neurotransmitters. So between each neuron is a little gap called a synapse, which is right here, this little area right there. So as the electrical impulse arrives at the synapse, the electricity carries chemicals called neurotransmitters, okay? Neurotransmitters. And those are actually released, and the chemicals cross the synapse and carry the message to the next sensory neuron. So what is a synapse? Well, it's the little gap between each neuron. So what are nerve fibers? Well, they are bundles of axons and dendrites from many neurons, okay? So what part of the neuron receives the impulse? Well, that will be the dendrite. We've already gone over that. So what are our impulses? Well, they're electrical messages sent from neuron to neuron, all right? So let me just tell you this. When we get back to school next week, I'm planning we're going to do a lab activity by using beads, and we're going to make a representation of a neuron with beads. You'll see that next week, okay? All right, moving on here. Now, let's look at page 226 in our activity manual. We're going to start here at the top of the page. Anything that you see that is highlighted with a Q by it, that means you want to highlight it because that's something you're going to see on your quiz tomorrow, okay? So, number 1, the central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. You should have already done these, so check your answers, okay? Number 2, the peripheral nervous system does the communicating with the central nervous system about what is happening in and around the body. Number 3, the column of nerve fibers protected by your backbone is called your spinal cord. Now let's move on to section B here. You will notice there are some things here that are highlighted, but number 4 is not. So, what controls conscious movements and directs muscles when learning a new activity? And that's your cerebrum, C. 5 is A, which is your brainstem, controls involuntary activities, the functions necessary for life. 6 is C, which is your cerebrum, highlight that. Your cerebrum is the center of reasoning and decision making and influences your personality. And you see a picture of the brain down here, and this tells you we're talking about the cerebrum and the cerebellum. And the brainstem, which is cerebrum, cerebellum, and then the brainstem. We're talking about those 3 parts, okay? Just wanted you to see that. We'll get back to that here in a few moments. Alrighty, so number 6 is highlighted. Number 7 is also highlighted, and this is the cerebrum as well, and it receives and interprets messages from your senses. Number 8 is also highlighted. It's B, cerebellum, which helps to control your balance, like when you're standing up, and your muscle coordinations, and it remembers how to do an activity. That part of your brain reminds you how to do an activity. Number 9 is C, your cerebrum, and that classifies sounds as speech, music, or noise. Let your brain know if it's speech or music or just noise or whatever it is, the sounds. Number 10 is B, that's also highlighted. It's your cerebellum, and that controls the speed and force with which you move. Number 11 is A, and that is your brainstem, and that connects the brain to the spinal column. All right, let's move on down here to the last part here on this page. Now, why is it important to wear equipment when playing certain sports or riding bikes? It's very important, guys, because you want to make sure that you protect the body from injuries to the brain or spinal column. I mean, those type of injuries can result in blindness, paralysis, a loss of speech or movement, or death even, or even just some memory issues where you can't remember certain things because part of your brain was injured or damaged. So it's really important that you protect that beautiful brain that God gave you. Number 13, what part of the human body, the parts of the human body protect the brain? Well, that's your skull and the cerebrospinal fluid. You don't need to highlight any of this here as well. Number 14 is your cerebrum. Number 15 is the parietal lobe. Number 16 is your frontal lobe here. Number 17 is your temporal lobe. Number 18 is the occipital lobe. Number 19 is the brainstem. And number 20 is the cerebellum. If I'm going too fast, you can just pause it and make sure you got everything filled in correctly in your book. All right, so now we have 2 more pages, and the first one we're going to look at is the nervous system page, okay? Let's just move this over And you see what is highlighted here in the nervous system. All right, so you see that we have the central nervous system. The nervous system is broken down into two sections, the central and the peripheral. We're looking at the central, and the central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord, okay? And that part of that system helps make decisions and controls your body actions. All right? Then you have the peripheral nervous system that is also highlighted. It consists of millions of nerve cells all over the body. It communicates with central nervous system about what goes on in and around your body. Now, the peripheral nervous system is broken down into the autonomic and the somatic. The autonomic nervous system controls involuntary activities such as your heart rate and breathing. And then it also regulates internal environment. You don't need to know this for the quiz, or you don't need to have that highlighted. Let me put it that way. Somatic nervous system controls your skeletal muscle, and of course that involves your movements. And it adjusts bodies to external environment. That's the things around us, on the outside around us, okay? Now, let's go ahead and pull over the next page here. We'll just pull it up here. We'll start at the top. There's quite a few things highlighted here, so please make note of that. Number 7, the command center for the body is the brain. Number 8 is highlighted. There are 3 parts of the brain, are the cerebrum, cerebellum, and the brainstem. Number 9, the cerebrum is divided into distinct areas called lobes. Number 10, the spinal cord is the main pathway connecting the brain to the rest of the body. All right, D. And again, make sure you highlight what is highlighted here. D, number 11, a nerve cell is called a neuron. Number 12, an impulse is an electrical message that passes along neurons to the brain. Number 13, dendrite. The dendrite receives the message or the impulses from another neuron. Number 14, cell body. Number 15, axon. It's the cell body passes the messages to the axon, which sends the impulses to the next neuron. Number 16, synapse, which is the gap between the neuron over which the impulse crosses, is called the synapse. And we're not going to go over 17 and 18 right now, but you can go ahead and check your answers on those as well. All right, guys, that finishes up today. Tomorrow you'll have an open book, open activity manual quiz here on LMS. Have a great day.